that sounds like a good time to me. Howdy guys, I'm AutoEdits Jason, and in this video I'm going to be installing the first practical repair / upgrade to the Range Rover Sport here. We're going to be installing a set of the PowerStop Brakes Z36 carbon fiber ceramic pads and the cross-drilled in slotted rotors onto this thing. And I have two treats in this video for you, little extras. I'm gonna do the second half, not just the install of these things, but I'm gonna take you with me for the break-in procedure. These are an amazing upgrade on their own, but when you go in the bedding in or seating in procedure of these things where you go through a heat cycle, you turn these up a notch and they just become exponentially better. And so I'll take you for a ride and show you how I do that on these things. Plus, I'm gonna show you how I go all Jason on the wheel wells and chassis suspension cleanup stuff. You guys always ask and appreciate that, and I like spending that extra time. So I'll take you for a little quick tour of how I take things from looking tired and normal to Jason approved. This here is an amazing upgrade. I got introduced to the PowerStop brand 7 years ago when I first ran basically this exact kit on my Jeep and have never looked back since. I've installed the Z36 in particular on every vehicle I could since then and have been extremely happy. But the standout feature of these things is that they are a no dust pad. You could just look at the Jeep right now. I've been using that as a city beater and just commuting down into Hollywood in that thing, and the wheels look amazing. The Land Rover pads that were on this thing were absolute dust monsters. A couple of days of driving and these wheels were absolutely coated and just gross with brake dust. So I'm really looking forward to changing that dynamic, plus adding a little bit of extra braking capability. The brakes on this thing were actually quite good already. So am I gonna be putting bigger tires and a whole bunch of armor and stuff on this thing? Well, maybe, I don't know. Well, looks like it might need some trimming to fit some 37s, but you can't blame a dude for trying, right? I just thought it would be pretty hilarious to see how big a difference the stock tire to a 37 off the Jeep would look, and it's pretty awesome looking, but pretty hilariously out of place here. So you can see where my mind goes initially, but for now, let's get these brakes on there. So I've done the brake install full videos before. I'll put links to those in the description, and this is no different from those. There are some universal things that you just got to take care of, be wary of. Like on this one, take your caliper off, clean it up really good, and then you push your pistons back up in the thing. And then always make sure that on the master cylinder you have room. So on my master cylinder, since I'm doing a mild flush, I'm not going to do a full brake bleed and flush on this one. I'm hoping not to have to do that. So we just got an automotive turkey baster, got a lot of the fluid out of the master cylinder, and then pushed all of my pistons back using one of these little tools. You've seen these before, they're cheap, get one of these. And then that allows you to now easily put your brakes back together and then top off the master cylinder. I'll show you how we do that at the end. And you'll have a relatively fresh system. It's not a full flush, but it'll just get me going for now. So the brakes are pretty straightforward repair and install. And on these, they have a little bolt that captures these in place. It's pretty handy. What I found is don't just go and tighten that up. I actually use the lug nuts to square the rotor up and have better luck with these things, then tighten that down. That's just a little tip I found. And then that way I know when I tighten this thing down that everything is super flush and happy. Also, off camera, I did a ton of work on this thing yesterday. I replaced both front half shafts, so both front axles. The one on the passenger side was no good. It had a hole in the boot and actually had a click in it. This side wasn't necessarily bad, but my OCD, I just want symmetry, so I replaced them both. And then I did the while I'm there, so I replaced the wheel hubs on both sides too. And oddly enough, the one that had a bad half shaft, the actual unit bearing was okay, but this one on this side, that had a fine axle, has a very clicky, crunchy wheel bearing that was on its way. So that felt good. So now I have fresh wheel bearings, fresh front axles in this thing, and then we're gonna have fresh front brakes. So that feels good. Now that we have our new rotor in place, it's time to get our caliper mounting bracket on, and that gets some new hardware from the PowerStop kit, and you'll see that right here. You get these new stainless steel retaining clips, and then another cool tip here is to make sure that you take these things out. Here, let me just show you what that looks like. Take these things out, clean them up, put a little bit of grease on there, and then put those back in. Now this kit comes with new boots, but I really like, these are in good shape, and I really like the Range Rover ones here. So I'm gonna use these, they're in perfect shape, and then that's what you want. You don't want too much grease in there because that will hydro lock your little pin in there. So you want that to move nice and smooth all the way to the bottom. That's what you want there. So now let's get that on. So we'll start our caliper in place. One unique thing I noticed about the Range Rover is that these caliper bolts are actually 12 points. So that is unique to that. Another unique feature of these bolts is that they're spec'd to 200 foot-pounds on the torque wrench. My torque wrench doesn't even go that high, so that's why I'm using the orange thread locker and my calibrated elbow. We're gonna go ahead and dial that into 200, which means just basically give her all the beans with a big bar and count on the thread locker to do its job. So all the way. Now it's time to put our braking pads in. The kit comes with ceramic silicone brake component lubricant, but I've now done these enough to where I just have a tube of my own. And so I don't have the anxiety of trying to make the little packet that comes with the kit last long enough for these things, because that anxiety is real for me. So I'm putting a little bit less grease just on the ends here and on the outer of the caliper, and then we'll just go ahead and get these in place. I'm gonna go ahead and put some orange thread locker on those. Let's release our caliper. And remember, we've pushed these pistons back on all of the cylinders here. Start the top one first. And then you just capture this inside nut with a 17, and then the outside nut is a 13 millimeter. This one calls for 30 foot-pounds, and so that feels just about right there. Not that tight, and again, we have that thread locker on there to help protect us, and so we'll get these cinched down right about click. And this should go right into the slot onto the pads, and there it does. All right, once I get to the point where I think I'm done, I do a quick sanity check. We have all of our hoses and lines attached, speed sensor, brake sensor, hose attached, bleeder covered. See right here, this is why you want to pay attention to those and give them the love. You want them to make sure that this floats, and that way you get good pad wear. Now, before you even put the tires on and get it back on the ground, one of those things that will catch a lot of people out is that now that you've all the calipers pushed out, you have to build all of the fluid back in there. And what people will do is they'll get excited, they'll get in the car, start to drive it, and then realize that the pedal does this, right to the floor. So what we're gonna do now is just gently pump that sucker back up, get fluid back through the lines, and then we'll kind of keep an eye on our master cylinder and see how far down it goes and see if I've done okay on the fluid. And just to double check, I'm gonna start it. See, and it goes down. All right, we have a pretty good pedal. We can now safely put it on the ground. You may wonder why I'm not going to great lengths to clean these wheels before putting them back on. And that's because the one time your Z36 pads may make some dust or will make some dust is in the break-in or the seating in procedure. So I'm gonna wait to clean them until after this little run here. And then I'll actually do a whole video on how to make wheels that are just caked with brake dust look brand new. Speaking of cleaning stuff, Here's my technique for pulling off what I'm calling a half Jason on the wheel wells and suspension bits just for this video. Start by spraying some super clean around the area and scrub that in a bit with a rag or brush. And use a bit of soapy water as a chaser while you clean. Full strength super clean can leave some stains on bare aluminum parts. Dry everything off as best you can with a rag or compressed air, or both. Now it's time for the final touch. Spray some penetrating oil or whatever your favorite WD-40 type oil is on everything and wipe that in. Be careful not to get that oil on your brakes. I would normally use a plastic bag to cover mine during that part of the procedure, but this stock stuff is about to get PowerStopped. All of these products are available in the AutoEdits Amazon store, and there's a convenient hyperlink in the description. Time to bolt the tires back on, set the Rover back on the ground, and get this thing ready for our break-in test drive. So I'm heading out of town into the countryside a little bit. The trick is finding a place where you could do these, the procedure, the slowdowns, without intruding other people's day or traffic. So I'm heading up a highway near me where I think there's an area that I could find some space to do this. And the funny thing is when I first would do this, I would go, oh my God, every mile I drive on these without having them bedded in was bad, and it's not. These things are fully functional, just like this. The break-in or the seating of the pads to the rotor procedure is like this. You're just getting heat cycles in those carbon fiber ceramic pads enough so that they transfer over some material onto the rotor surface. And that's what I learned is where the magic happens. Once it transfers some of that material onto the surface of the rotor, that pad now has that extra bit of grip and feel to it, offering that more performance. So that's what you're doing. And the trick here is not to overdo it. I've done that in the past, and where I've boiled my brake fluid and had a bit of a spongy pedal afterwards, and that's how you know. So the key is you have the instructions on the inside of the lid. It's basically 5 40-mile-per-hour down to 10 stop or slow downs, and then 5 35 to 5 very chill slow downs. Not chill, but like normal driving. That's the key. So it's not getting overboard or going crazy here. So we're in a very open section here. I got nobody behind me. Let's start the procedure. So we're at 40, go down to 10. Okay. Don't want to come to a stop during this procedure either. So go up to 40. Oh, this thing is so fun. Down to 10. Up to 40. Gets up to 40 pretty good. Down to 10. I'm already noticing a little bit more aggressive bite each time. And that's 5 of those. Now we'll do 35 to 5, kind of chill. And that's gonna let the pad slow down a little bit more. 35 to 5, that's 1. 2, 35 to 5. I love how this thing just hustles. It's such a fun little ride. Down to 5. All right, now that we've got all of the cooking done, It's time. This is a critical point. You want to make sure that you give yourself distance and don't want to come to a complete stop. So if you are in town and you come up to a stoplight, gauge that distance. And even if you're just inching along, you just want to keep the rotors moving, because the pads sitting on the rotors right now would be bad in the sense that the heat transfer wouldn't be even. So right now is just a nice time to just drive. Let those vents cool everything back down nice and evenly, and this is what creates the magic of the Z36 pads and rotor combo. I can't tell you how AutoEdits Jason approved that is. So now everything's seated, feels good. Let's do an aggressive stop and see how they feel. Oh my goodness gracious. Oh, that's good. That's real good. Yeah, that just turned these brakes from a 10 to an 11, no doubt about it. Very pleased. So there you guys have it. My second favorite first thing to do to a vehicle. We did the exhaust, which still makes my soul happy just every time I hear this thing run. And now the PowerStop brakes on this thing, I just have that peace of mind. I just know that they work, they feel good, they last good. They just check every box and deliver on every expectation. So thank you guys so much for coming along on this little journey, and we'll see you on the next video. And until next time, enjoy your drive.